Welcome, everybody, to the DAT Poker Podcast, which, as you know, for the next little while is going to be the Game of Gold podcast, recapping each episode of the Game of Gold as they air to give you kind of a behind-the-scenes look at some of the stuff that's going on. We'll catch you up with the action and the drama. This show isn't your grandpa's poker show. The Game of Gold combines a reality TV angle with poker, which gives the viewer a chance to really get to know the players. I mean, if you think about it, guys, one of the things we all like about watching TV, whether it's Poker After Dark or High Stakes Poker, is the banter at the table. We want to hear about the players' lives. We want to hear about stories. We want to hear about all that stuff. And this format, without play-by-play commentating as the poker goes down, other than from the players, is fantastic. And that gives us sort of the ability to learn more about each of these people and become familiar with them, but also give us a rooting interest into some of the players that you might not know. And that's what makes this show, for me, a lot of fun, going into the sweat rooms, watching them play in real time. You get all their thoughts on the hands. It's great. I love the format.
I had a realization while I was watching this real quick, and it hit me like 20 minutes into the show, and I didn't know why. I was like, why is this show fun? And I realized, you guys have all been at that thing where you're sweating a final table. Your best friend's a final table. Adam, in your case, your brother or whatever, somebody that you've got like 5% of, but he's a close friend. They haven't won a bracelet in a while. You're sweating them. It's actually more nerve-wracking watching them than it is playing, because we've all played heads up, three-handed, four-handed. We've all been at final tables, and we're like, yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking, but it's still poker. But you feel like you're in control of your own destiny. When you're just watching, whether it's your buddy at the final table, or in this case, your teammates in the back room who have a vested interest in you, it's so much more nerve-wracking, and you see the real raw emotion. And I figured out, like, that's why this is compelling. Like, it's compelling because everybody in the back room cares so much, and by extension, you, the viewer, you feel like you're one of the people in the back room too.
Yeah, and that's the complaint about new poker, and we don't have any of the characters from the old school. You think back to all those guys in the golden age, and it's because we got to learn about them, listen to them. They were funny, amusing, and somewhere that kind of maybe got lost in some of the poker on TV. So I love to see that we're back in there. This episode, for instance, we get to hear Jungle Man's thoughts, and he just becomes such an interesting character throughout it that we all knew he was anyway.
Okay.
Obviously, it goes without saying, if you haven't watched episode 4 of the Game of Gold, stop what you're doing, go over and watch that before we spoil the heck out of it here and talk about different hands and different stuff that goes on. So come on back. All right, when we last left, guys, it was do or die time for Team Clubs. Jason Koon was the last hope. Team Clubs was in last place. Jay Koon had to come in. It was a mystery on how many coins that this heat was worth. But suffice to say that Jason had to probably finish first or second, at least second, maybe win it for Clubs to stay in the competition. For Team Clubs, as Charlie Carroll called it, Team Broccoli, which was hilarious. I love that.
Was he like Team Broccoli? Team Broccoli, and then they adopted Team Broccoli as our name because the club, I guess, looks like broccoli.
So good, so good. I loved it.
It also goes with the vegan angle.
Yep.
So Terrence, Jason, given that he's got to probably win this, but maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's got to finish second. Right. We don't know the payouts. It's a mystery at this point. If you're in Jason's shoes, how do you approach this? Is it just winner take all, or there's a little bit of laddering here?
I mean, he has to go in knowing that probably third isn't going to be enough. Maybe second is enough. Unless, of course, it's the team that they're chasing. What is it? Hearts, Maria's Jungle, and
okay,
I forget who's exactly what suit. But Maria's team, the team that they're chasing, unless they finish first, then second might be good enough. You kind of expect it to be worth more, unless it's like a weird winner take all situation, which is what everybody speculated. Maybe that's the plot twist. But he knows that fourth isn't going to be enough. Obviously, that's last. Third is probably not going to be enough, even if the team that they're chasing finishes fourth. So he's got to have the mentality that I think second, at a bare minimum, first would be nice, but second might be enough to stave off elimination, as long as the guys they're chasing don't get a result. That's kind of probably where I had it. On the other hand, he also has to think about who will be laddering, right? So Fedor is going to go in there. He's probably going to be totally carefree. They're not going home no matter what. But they know that that Jungle can't afford to finish last. That's an important thing. That's an important piece of information when he's going to be playing pots against jungle. And also, who's the fourth player in the seat?
Williams.
David, yeah. David is going to be maybe a little on the conservative side, but David's probably safe too.
Yeah, no, you brought up a lot of the points that we sort of talked about in the room with Jason. Like one of the things we thought was also, obviously it could be like very top heavy and, it's one or two might work. But we also were thinking maybe there's enough of a spread between us and Jungle's team where if they come fourth, possibly a third could be good because we don't know how much more that heat was going to be worth. And I think that sort of like made the poker or the quality of the poker much better, right? So all of us poker nerds now, we know ICM enough. And it just becomes really boring poker when people know I need exactly third, I need exactly second. So here, leaving that as a mystery, I think really worked. And I think that's probably what went into the thought process of why they did that. Because, it's really, when you see people just like, guy jams and the other guy's ace king and he's just folding pre-flop, just like, that's stupid poker. We didn't want any of that. So it was real poker. And you allow these brains, these poker minds from the different walks of life to sort of approach it different ways. I think David Williams, like you said, he came in there, I think, partly, David has confidence in himself, confidence game. But you look at that lineup, man. Like, you got two options. You just shake your boots and be like, I'm scared of all three of these guys because they're all monsters. Or you say, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to play. And that's what we saw David Williams do, on his way to victory. He really just kind of like, as some of the hands that we're going to talk about going forward, some of those hands, it was like, he was just, he was not afraid to take some risks and really go for it.
All right. So when we last left episode 3, Koon had, I think he lost 25% of his stack after getting snapped off by David Williams. And we start the show with Koon making some headway. And the blinds, the first hand is 20,000 and 40,000. Koon starts the hand with 1.5 million. He opens the button with King 8 off to min raise to 80,000. David Williams in the big blind with 10-8 off makes the call. So King 8 versus 10-8. Flop comes Ace 8-6 Rainbow. They both flop middle pair. Of course, Koon with the better kicker. It goes check. Koon bets half pot, and David makes the call. The turn is the 5 of spades, which brings a backdoor flush draw, and of course, some straight possibilities there. Again, Ace 8-6-5, and it goes check check. The river is the 4 of spades, which completes the backdoor flush draw. And it puts out a 4-liner there. Any 7 is a straight. And then interesting for David here, he decides to turn his second pair into a bluff and bets 350,000 into 400K, almost a full pot there on the river. Koon goes into the tank now with a really, really tough call or a tough, I don't think he's, I think actually some backrooms even kind of thought, well, what if he shoves here with the king of spades in his hand, right? And then Koon goes, he starts thinking about it. He starts thinking about it out loud. He breaks the hand down sort of a theoretical perspective. And he, after the hand, so he ends up calling and his hand is good. But he also says he had some spidey senses there that David just didn't have it. And so thoughts, Terrence, why don't you go first? Thoughts on the bluff in the end, but the river, the hand in general.
I was very surprised David turned this hand into a bluff. And we're going to see David turn another equity hand into a bluff too, but I did not think that was his intention. It's a very interesting play, and I get that Jason. I get why Jason's very suspicious because it does seem like this is a very weird way to play this hand. If you have a 7 in your hand, I mean, you're basically representing 8-7, 6-7, that sort of thing that peeled on the flop and made it into the back doors. Now, Jason himself has an 8, which makes it harder for David to have these hands. And so he's starting to think, okay, well, maybe it's hands like 9-10. I mean, that's a hand that's going to be a big bluff there. And the fact that he had a spade in his hand does, of course, make him more suspicious. I thought there was no chance, given the exact format, that he was actually going to blast with the king of spades here, even though his hand doesn't look very good. I just didn't see that happening, just under the circumstances of the team pressure that he's under, that needing to probably win, but maybe finish second or at best third if Jungle finishes dead last. I did not think he was going to be able to pull the trigger on this. I was a little surprised he pulled the trigger and call. I actually thought there was a good chance, despite all the bluff possibilities, that he might actually lay this one down and David might get it through.
Yeah, no, I think like, and I'm actually curious, to hear from Jason. Jason did break down very well. He said all I beat is 9-10. Because as you said, the hands that peel 9-7, well, that makes a straight. That's another one of the hands that David can be repping. But when he makes this size, he's eliminating any sort of like 2 pair hands. When you bet so big, you're polarizing your hand. You're saying I have a straight, maybe a better straight, or a flush. I don't have any of the middle hands. So I wonder, in theory, if King 8 is supposed to call here. And I'm curious, like, how Jason got there. Because as you said, David, not really. I don't think he's supposed to bluff that card, right? Because like eights just win a lot. You know what I mean? Right. And like, is this maybe better off as a bluff catcher, where you just check and maybe pick off Jason, who tries to turn his king high or queen high into a bluff in this spot? But if he had like the 6, maybe I could see like, all right, maybe I'll turn that into a bluff, or if he hit the 4 or whatever, or the 5. But having the 8, I just feel like it wins so much. And one of the things in theory that you try to do when you're bluffing is a couple things. Number one, you want to have some sort of blocker effects and, not unblock stuff. But in addition to that, when you think of your range composition, you're going to value bet the top of your range and you're going to bet the bottom of your range. The stuff in the middle is what checks. But he's not in that. He's not in the bottom of his range. He's kind of in the middle, right? So it was a really interesting spot there from David. And, Koon like really sniffs it out. He said spidey senses, and I'm curious to know like how much he balanced there, like theory versus thing. And we're going to ask him about that when he comes on.
Daniel, do you think any of the other players that this is a good bluff on the river against any other players? Like, does Robin Poker fold here? I mean, it's into Koon, who sniffed it out, and he's a wizard, obviously. But do you think there's anybody of the group that this would work against?
Honestly, I think like Koon might be one of the only few people that actually is able to make this call in such quick time, because Jason plays super high rollers all the time with 30-second clocks, and he breaks down hands very methodically, and he puts a lot of thought into each one. So he's accustomed to doing that quickly. I don't think, no offense to any other players, Robin or whoever, I don't think in 30 seconds or a minute they're going to be able to just break it down and go, oh, wait a minute, there's something here that makes it worth calling. So I think like, Koon's a master, and he's not just a robot. I think a lot of people, see him as a guy who studies, and he does. He's funny behind the scenes. Like we were joking about the solver, and he goes, I am the fucking solver, right? Like he is this, I am the solver. But it was cool to see here. He sort of combined theoretical knowledge with some physical tells.
Yeah, I think I would have folded. I think I folded in the spot.
Yeah, I think so too. I would have folded as well.
It's like James Harden says, I'm not a system player. I am the system. It's the same thing, right? All right. The next interesting hand, we move on to 20,000, 40,000 blinds. David Williams limps in the small blind with the ace jack off, setting a trap here for Fedor in the big blind. Fedor's an aggressive player. He's going to raise a lot here from the big blind. So this limp makes sense. And he does so with the ace 8 of hearts. He makes it 120,000. David quickly makes it, quickly to the edit. It seemed quick enough. He makes it 500,000 to go before the flop. And there's now we cut to the back rooms, which is great here, because Yo Viral obviously is talkative on Fedor's team, and he's begging Fedor to fold here. And he doesn't. Fedor calls, which seems pretty standard at this point. The flop is King 10-5, 2 spades. Neither player has a spade. Neither player flops a pair, so they both have ace high. David bets a quarter of the pot, 250,000. Interesting size he selects there. And Fedor peels with the backdoor hearts and ace high. The turn is the 9 of spades. So King 10-5, 9 brings the flush in on the turn, and neither player has a spade, so it goes check, check. And the river pairs the middle card, a 10. So it's King 10-5, 9, 10. And David open shoves all in. 1.4 in the middle, and Fedor goes into the tank. He's got 1.1 behind, and he seems very suspicious here. What can David have that he's going to play in this manner? Is ace high good, possibly? I'm trying to think of hands that maybe he beats with his ace 8 of hearts. Terrence, thoughts here on this hand?
I love this hand, and the reason why I love this hand is because as somebody who doesn't play No Limit a lot, I feel like I get myself in these spots. And I think it was Charlie Carroll who said both of these guys are thinking, "What the fuck am I doing in this hand?" And it's the worst feeling in the world to be like, this pot. There's a lot of money in this pot, but I don't know what I'm doing. Am I supposed to bluff at it? Like, I don't have anything. It's the worst feeling in the world. And even Fedor, a guy who has been there and done that in terms of No Limit Hold'em, he seems very confused. Like, when you look at his face, and maybe it's the way that it's cut and edited, he does seem legitimately confused. This is not when David makes it 500,000, he's not fake tanking. Now, Fedor's never folding, right? He's raised with a top 20% hand. I don't think he's ever actually folding, but he knows he hates it. Because at this stack depth, like, that's such a strong play, the limp re-raise out of the small blind. But he's like, but I'm too high up in my range, and I'm German, and I cannot fold things that are at the top of my range. So he calls. And now this flop kind of misses them both. I mean, David flops a Broadway gut shot, but he's got range advantage, so he bets. And Fedor's like, well, shit, I have ace high and backdoor hearts, and I'm getting way too good of a price. I have to call. The turn, I think, is the spot where I don't know what I would do if I was either player. I don't know what the solver does. I don't know what you're supposed to do. I don't know what you're supposed to do against the population, but it's a really rough spot. So often when you see that happen, it goes check, check. The river 10 and David going all in, that's something else. I mean, it's hilarious because his team is thinking, oh no, we're going to get bluffed off this hand. He's going to check. Fedor's going to jam. David's going to crying fold. And instead, David goes all in what he thinks is a bluff, but is actually technically value because ace jack is good. Very weird spot. I don't think this is a theory play. I assume it's not, but it works out very well for David and his team. But yeah, Fedor very suspicious because he's just like, what is actually happening here? Like what did you bet with now that you couldn't have bet with on the turn? And because nothing really makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's Charlie even says that. He's like, what is David repping here, right?
Yeah.
What's interesting is, David makes this play and he almost gets paid.
Right.
I think what's interesting too about this hand is, like you said, one of the things about raising from the big blind when you do this is one of the hands you kind of want to avoid doing that with in these stacks is those marginal hands that are like kind of too good to fold to the limp raise. Like ace 8 off, okay, you can fold to the limp raise, no problem. King 4 off, king 5 off. But the ace 8 suited, now you're in a really annoying spot when he limp raises to 12.5 big blinds at that depth. So can you fold? Yucky, gross, right? Now, as you said, on the flop, he's got a backdoor flush draw. It's quarter pot, so he's getting direct odds of 5-1. Could still have the best hand. David could be messing around here with some hands. And there's also a lot of ways he can win this hand as well. So he makes the call. Now what I think is interesting is that 9 of spades in the turn. The problem for Fedor after David checks is I thought, like, well, maybe Fedor has to bet here, right? Because it's like you're at the bottom of your range. Like, what worst possible hand do you have ever that calls this flop? You literally are at the bottom. You never have worse than an ace high peel here. So the question is, can he bet? And if he bets, how much? There's 1.4 in the middle. He's got 1.1. Can he really go like 350, and sort of like make a blocker size bet or bet like third pot and then maybe like decide to jam on river or shut it down? I think my guess on why Fedor checks it back is he probably felt like David was a little too sticky, and he's probably right about that. So he's like, you know what, I'm not really gonna do that. What I would have been really curious to find out is if David checked that 10 on the river, was Fedor going for it? Because I think he probably was. I don't think he's going to be peeling that flop, checking back turn without a plan to also follow that up with a very reasonable jam on that river. Like he can absolutely have everything there. And again, because of the fact that he peeled the flop, there's just not a lot of bluffs. So, so it was super interesting from both perspectives, but like, and I don't even know, maybe David's bluff is not so bad. Like, I mean, does a king ever fold there? I don't like, you could hear Jungle actually. He whispered over to Koon. He's like, David has king jack. Or no, he thought Fedor had king jack. Pardon.
Yeah.
He thought Fedor was tanking with king jack. Meanwhile, he just had like ace 8, which was wild.
This really seemed like old school poker versus a new school poker type hand, right? David Williams being the old school guy seemed like a bit, it seemed like, I've never played with David, but he seems like a field player. And of course, Fedor is a German solver. So completely different style, it seems like.
Fedor, you got Fedor pegged dead wrong, buddy.
Okay.
You do. Fedor is a machine. Fedor is not just solver guy. He is as on top of it with theory as you get, but this guy is 100% at his core, feel in the moment, physical live read tells, play the player. He does not stick to a GTO line. This is not your basic bot, I promise.
Interesting. Okay. After that hand, we see Koon is chipped up, right? He picks up some chips, but things get ugly for him as he gets Fedor's 1.1 million in against him, holding king. So Koon picks up kings. Fedor has ace queen. They get it all in, and Fedor banks an ace. Comes ace deuce deuce like it's supposed to. When you have two kings, like, geez, just brutal. The clubs continues to run terribly here, getting it in a great spot.
It's funny they did the cut, and I noticed this. If this has been a wonderfully produced show. If I have a criticism, I'm kind of a sicko. I want to see the sucked out team shot first, because what they do is they go to Fedor's team and then they go to your team, Daniel, and you guys are like, oh fuck me. Like I want to see the pain first.
Yeah.
As soon as that ace rolls off the flop, I want to see pain. Because we're all thinking it.
We're both sick. I thought the exact same thing. I'm like, oh, flash to the ace rolls off, the ace deuce deuce. That seemed like a really key hand. Nothing to break down there, but that seemed like a hand. Obviously, what goes without saying that if Koon picks up,
we win that pot. Now we're 3-handed with the lead, and Team Clubs is fucking rocking and rolling.
Yeah. Next interesting hand to go over happens between Jungle, who's woken up out of his stupor, and Fedor Holtz. The blinds are 30,000, 60,000. Fedor opens to a min raise 120 with the king queen off, and Jungle defends in the big blind with the queen 7 of hearts. The flop is ace queen jack rainbow, so they both flop middle pair. Jungle checks. Fedor value bets here for 70,000, and Jungle with second pair is going to call, which he does. The turn is a queen, so they both make trips on the turn. Looks like, okay, this is game over for Jungle. Team Clubs has notched up one at least here. And Jungle checks the three queens with the 7 kicker. Fedor goes big now. He bets 300,000 into 440,000, and Jungle finds a call, set of a shove. The river is a 10, so this puts a 4-liner king out there, which of course Fedor has. He improves to the straight. Didn't need any help, obviously. And then the other thing is here, this could definitely kill some action on the river. Jungle checks now with the 3 of a kind, and Fedor now bets small with his straight. He bets 280,000, about a third pot, quarter pot, I think. And in the back room, you hear a lot of talk about the sizing. Fedor, he understands the situation, knows he can't go big now. Jungle times down, thinking, okay, what do I beat here? How am I going to call? His clock ticks down, and he uses a gold coin here for an extra 30 seconds, and it leads to an excellent fold. I thought that was an interesting spot as well. Thoughts on the hand, guys? Obviously, tough spot here for Jungle, and he doesn't end up losing all his chips as he folds.
Tough spot for Jungle, and another kind of mini bad beat for Team Clubs that it was a 10 on the river. Because if it's a deuce, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, or 9, then it's GG for Jungle. And you guys maybe ladder up a bit. So we're going to see it. I think there was another hand like that too, where Jungle's just supposed to go broke and doesn't. I mean, I think that's the case, is that the 10 on the river is a bit of a river killing action card there. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. You said, Adam, that you were surprised by the check call on the turn from Jungle. I thought he just has to. I think he has to check call here. You're just if you check raise like every time in this spot, then what are you going to do when you check call through streets? Like, you just kind of never have it. So it feels like defensively, at least, you have to check call when you make the queen, and you often make more money when that happens too. But there's Jungle. I was surprised that he was able to lay this down. That's really impressive to me. I was totally wrong, by the way, that I predicted nobody else would use a gold coin. I never would have expected Jungle to be the guy to use a gold coin and also make a huge hero laydown in the spot. So very hats off to Jungle for sure.
I think there was something important said in the back room, and it's Yo Viral, who mentions the fact that Jungle Man is not just a no-limit player. He plays high-stakes limit poker, right? So no-limit players, they look at, 280 into a million, like 28%, but limit players are adept at making these laydowns against small bets, and he knows that for this size, he's eliminating a lot of bluffs for Fedor. He feels like the bluffs are going to be bigger sizes and stuff. And then it's like the question is like, what hand goes bet, 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 flop, turn, river? Like some of those hands that were bluffs might have been king high. Well, guess what? King high makes it straight. So a lot of times I think it's a lesson for people that play poker is just because the bet's small doesn't mean like, oh, well, I have to call here, because the fact is it's probably unlikely that it's going to be a profitable play anyway. Even though you are getting like 5-1, is he really bluffing 20% of the time here? And if he's not bluffing, is he value betting an ace? There's no chance, right? So I think, I think Jungle was smart to use the coin if he needed to, and he ended up making a good laydown. But I think a lot of it has to do with background being, sort of a limit player. I found it interesting too at the end of the hand that sort of Jungle was visibly annoyed with David because David, he was having like full blown just conversation. He's trying to talk to Koon or whatever, and he's right in the middle of the both of them, in a really big spot. And you hear the back rooms like basically saying David's way out of line because time banks could be crucial. Like, and Yo Viral says, and this isn't completely true, but somewhat, he brings up an interesting point about David, like maybe not a high roller regular, realizing like how important these gold coins are, and was just kind of oblivious to what was going on.
It was weird that Jungle didn't just, kind of put his hand up and say, David, give me a second. Because I'm sure David would have responded in that situation. I don't think David was trying to be like, I'm gonna fuck this guy's decision making and just keep talking to Koon through Jungle. Like, why doesn't Jungle just kind of say like, hey, Dave, need a minute. And David would have shut up. He could have shut up for 90 seconds. But I mean, Jungle, obviously with social things and stuff of that nature, decides to make his decision and then kind of, bark at David after. I thought that was a little weird, but also on brand.
It's funny you say this because it reminds me of, do you guys remember the drama? It was on
Dan Smith.
Yeah. Dan Smith, can I get a second, please? And Jason Koons goes, stop, bro. It's like you ask all the time. Like I've seen, and it's true. I will say, Dan, he's more than in his right to ask the question. But like I've seen Dan where like we were going on break in Poker Go Studio, and I'm like standing in the middle of the room, and we're just chatting about like on break with people, and he's like at a table. They're going, "Can I get a minute, please?" I'm like, "What the fuck, bro? No,
that's not the situation.
Of course, that's very, very different than this one. But like, see, this sort of happens, right? And I think like. What the point he's making is like, let's say you play a regular main event with no shot clock. Like you talk. If somebody needs a minute, they'll tell you. But in this case, you really need to be mindful. And I talk a lot at the poker table, but I always try whenever there's like big action going on to shut my mouth and, let people think.
Yeah, and I think you see that David instantly knows that he shouldn't have been talking and feels bad about it. And again, probably just didn't realize it at all in the moment. Just, David Williams is a talkative guy, just like you are, Daniel. He just kind of forgot that he shouldn't be talking in that spot.
Yep.
All right, moving on. We see team clubs that continue to just not be able to catch a break or ladder as Jungle's saved by the deck when his Jack 10 off outruns David's King Jack. And then Jungle doesn't go bust with King 9 versus Fedor's King Jack, leaving himself with Peanut, but he's still alive.
So real quick, I know we're not going to break that hand down, but that was surprising to me too. I think the board is like King, Ace, 6, 10 with no flush, and Jungle leads for I think like
you bet 7, 8.
The SPR is basically 1, and I think he leads for about 3/4 of his time.
He bets 780, leaving himself 200, and you see Fedor just snap. He never even considered putting him in for the
never even considered raising, and that would have eliminated it. And you see, I do see this a lot in no limit tournaments these days. Guys leaving themselves with like a chip behind. And Daniel, maybe
you think they would have eliminated him? You think Jungle would have called off with the 3 kings and the 9 kicker
for like getting
maybe because the 10 played
like 20-1 at that point or something? Like
maybe. The problem is like it's one of those spots where Fedor has 0 bluffs. Right? There's just no way he's bluffing. Yeah. If he's not bluffing, I think he would have probably called because he might be getting half. Right.
Yeah. It's we see his elimination hand. He's also getting like 1,000,000 to 1, and he's like, okay, this is ridiculous. I have to call. Like, I feel like he probably would have called off, but even still, I was surprised to see Fedor not actually, like you said, he just snaps and he didn't jam. Can you talk a little bit about like the theory there? Is it just that he thinks that that Jungle is laddering, and so that he can't get any more value with a hand that's worse than King Jack there?
He's never going to get value, like especially with the sign that Jungle chooses. He's either bluffing or he beats you, like, or you chop, right? So now the question is there any value in trying to get him off a chop? Probably not when he puts in 780. So you just call. Like I understand Fedor thinking like, yeah, this is a simple situation. I think if Fedor, maybe I don't even know. I wonder like if he has
King Jack, right? Like so you beat every king that's not. It's
maybe if he has King Queen, I don't know, like King Queen raises, King Queen doesn't, but like I'm not that precise in terms of my thought process. But having said that, I think if I was in Fedor's shoes, I'd probably do the same thing because again, I don't expect Jungle. Jungle's going to fold all his bluffs, and okay.
Well, I thought it was a bad beat for you, but maybe not.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the other key hand, other than the kings, for team clubs. The blinds now are 40,000, 80,000, still four-handed. David opens on the button with 260K with King Jack, and Jay Koon defends with the 10 Jack off in the big blind. The flop, 8-7-3 rainbow, Koon checks, David bets 150,000, and Jason with 2 overs and a gut shot straight draw. He calls. You can see him kind of thinking in the back rooms. You hear yourself, Daniel, and it's almost like on cue. You go, well, Jack is the death card here. It's like you knew it was coming. So, of course, bink, here comes the Jack right on the turn.
It's like I'm thinking, what's the worst possible thing that can happen right now? Oh, a Jack. Oh, yeah. Why did I say that? Why did I put that in the universe? Because it is like the only card that really puts us in a bad spot where we're probably going to go broke here if, David plays it more aggro.
Yeah. This is the flying home from Korea card if the Jack kind of rolls off here, and it does. And it goes, but surprisingly, it goes check, check. They both check it. The river is a king, which actually might save your guys' tournament here, maybe, because David, of course, makes kings and jacks. And Jason's second pair here, weak kicker. And Koon has $1 million behind. He's got to decide what to do here. 700,000 in the pot. In his mind, his hand's probably good here, unless because it goes check, check on the turn. Does David have a jack? Probably not, maybe. Now a king rolls off, and unless he banked a king, he's going to have the best hand with the 10 jack. Koon has $1 million behind me and 700,000 in the pot. He bets 480,000. And obviously David's never folding with top 2. It's a matter of if he's raising, and everybody was shocked that he didn't. He says it's the nittiest call of his life, and he just calls to roll over and show Jason the top 2. Everybody's completely shocked here that he doesn't raise the river. Not sure Jason loses any more money, but interesting play here. Terrence, thoughts there?
Yeah, I was super surprised. I mean, you're only losing to 10-9. That's basically nothing else possibly makes sense at all to lose to. I'm David. I'm sticking it in. But he had a weird feeling that Koon had 10-9. Maybe he also thought, Koon, again, we talked about this. He's in a spot where he absolutely cannot finish last. So maybe he's going to be a little conservative, or maybe that's what David's thinking. And so he's thinking, well, this can only be, just like we talked about in the previous hand, if this can only be value, will he call a raise with worse when I raise my 2 pair? I think in this instance, yeah, because he could have, I mean, he's not going to call with Jack. I don't think Jason is ever going to call with Jack 10 anyway. So it really doesn't matter in this particular instance. But you can certainly see hands that Jason would have that he's absolutely, going to pay off here. So it feels like a misstep from David, but I'm not totally confident.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you defended David, because I was going to some degree, because as it turns out in this case, it didn't matter. Having said that, though, like what you're targeting here is you're targeting you obviously lose to the straights and you lose to sets. You beat all 2 pair hands, and you beat a king that binked. The problem is there is no real just king. Yeah. First of all, you block one. Second of all, it's an 8-7-3 flop. What king is Koon getting to the turn with that isn't a pair already? There isn't one, right? So So Koon never has just one king. So then the question is, does Koon have 2 pair? Did he have 8-7 that he slow played? Does he have Jack 8? Does he have King 8? Does he have King 3? Like, there's a whole bunch of 2 pair combos that he can have, so you could target those. Overall, obviously, in theory, it's a slam dunk raise. I mean, if you're not raising that hand, you're just like, nobody should ever call you ever. Like, it's too good a hand not to raise again, because, when you're trying to think about a value raise, you have to factor in, okay, are there enough hands that I beat that will call? And I think all the 2 pair hands do call in this spot, whereas 2 pair or better. Problem is one of the better beats, several of the better do. Actually, set of 3s. I don't know about 7s and 8s, because it was probably jam pre-flop too, but maybe pocket 3s. That's about it.
I want to rewind it to the flop here quickly, because my thoughts, and I think maybe somebody else mentioned it in one of the sweat rooms. Again, Koon with the 10 jack, it comes 8-7-3, and Koon check calls 150,000. Is there any kind of merit here to check ripping with 2 overcards in a gut shot? Daniel, the thoughts on maybe getting it in here?
Yeah, no, I definitely said that in the back room. I said, in theory, you could just check raise here, because David's a guy who's going to see bet a lot of flops, right? So he's going to bet all of his ace highs, and he's probably folding to check raises with random ace highs and, king high like he has and whatnot. And like, if he has an overpair, so be it. You're just dead, but it's just so unlikely. You're playing 4-handed. David's range is really, really wide. Even if David does have an 8 or 7, you're not dead. I mean, you have 10 outs, right? So it's a thing you could do. I think Koon thought maybe like the more careful play and probably better play overall is call, because you can still represent a lot of cards anyway. Like if a 6 or a 5 comes on the river, he's probably going to win this pot if it goes check, check.
I think that's a great one to ask him. Yeah, because it is, It is, I think, I want to know about this is, if he's just playing in some 25K over at Aria or whatever, is it different? Is his situation different than the situation that he's actually in this spot where he needs a win for his team? I'm curious.
Yeah.
All right. Next hand we see, I think Koon's down to a couple of big blinds. He open shoves with the ace 5 off. Against Fedor's. Fedor has king queen suited in the big blind and snap calls, of course. You guys are 53-47 or something before the flop, and not really, because you're obviously going to lose this one because you basically lost.
It wasn't even a sweat. It wasn't even a fun sweat.
I think we did go 0 for 6 in all ends as a team.
It was just, before the hand, even before the flop comes king queen, and it's essentially over. And I think we all knew it was over before the flop.
And it's even more painful because Jungle's sitting on 300K or something like that. So you don't even have the possible belief that that you might, if Jungle had busted and you end up busting the next hand on this, or if Jason ends up busting with it. Yeah. You would at least have a sweat, like, oh, maybe third place is worth just buckets, but no.
So we talked a lot about Jason's hands here, about his experience and about his thought process as he was playing these. Dana, you had a chance to catch up with Jay Koon, and why don't we cut to that now?
All right, we got him. The man, the myth, the legend. We got Jason Koon. What's up, buddy? Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Hey, man, it's with a heavy heart I have to do this interview with you.
I feel you. That was like, basically you're leading me to my first question, which is, how the fuck did we lose, man?
I don't know. It was hard to lose, but we did.
Yeah. So going in, right? Obviously, we put you in a tough spot. What was your approach in the final heat? Since your team shit the bed, and we left you trying to save them, but we also had that issue with the mystery payout. So we don't even know. You don't even know what you need, right? So how did you approach that mentally?
So I think that just by watching the episode, people overestimated how hard I decided I was going to go. I think a lot of the situations, I knew there was no pressure on me to not ladder. So I was just like, I'm going to approach this exactly like I would in a cash game. And I think that a lot of the situations ended up with me taking pretty aggressive lines, but that wasn't something that I had went in with the mindset of I'm going to rage on this table. I just thought the opportunities presented themselves, and in game, I felt like a few of the spots that came up, I needed to attack the way that I did.
Yeah. So I don't know if you feel the same way, but we ended up taking a flight home, right? And I together and
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, it stung. I don't know why it seemed to sting so much more for me that we were the first ones out. I kept thinking about every hand I could have played different. And listen, I know you play high stakes, and you play for the money, and you sit down and have $1 million swings. But was there any extra pain associated with you're Michael Jordan right now? You're the anchor.
Yeah.
It's a 3-point shot at the buzzer. You got to sink it, and it clinked off the rim.
Well, it was also all three of my teammates I really, really like as people. And I liked, excluding you, Daniel, but the other two guys I love. But no, it was it felt like, in some ways, an honor to be you know what? I get to step in here and I'm going to save us. I'm really going to do it. I'm going to save us. I know I am. I'm going to save us, and whenever I didn't, regardless of the outcome of the way that I played, it really hurt because I thought, how poker is. Sometimes you feel like you have more control than what you do. And I really thought I was going to get us out of that mess.
I believed in you. Everyone did. You left that room and you're
I believed in me too, man.
You're I'm going to put on a fucking clinic. And I think you did put on a clinic. Early on, things looked good. You were doing fine. And then you made that really sick call with the King 8. And, you did a good job, I think, breaking that down in a minimal amount of time on the show. And, you sort of mentioned that you kind of depended on your spidey senses a little bit there, which I love to see, of course, combining the two worlds, if you will. And I sort of heard your breakdown of yours, but I'm curious what you thought, because this is more a question for me, what you thought of David's choice to turn that specific hand into a bluff. Is that a thing or no?
No, in the moment, I wasn't exactly sure what to rule out. I know David plays a lot of mixed games and different games, and the board ran out in a way that I did bet half pot on the flop, so that shrinks his range a little bit more than say if I bet quarter pot. So if I quarter potted the flop and then the line happened the same way, him bluffing that hand would be really bad. But I think that he had probably a pretty good intuition to say, well, kind of a lot of money went in on the flop and I don't have that many worse hands. And so he decided to bluff. So I can't fault the guy. I was a little surprised to see it, but not completely surprised. Like I think it was a somewhat reasonable play, and by no means like a really bad play by him or anything. But he certainly does have worse hands to bluff with. And but yeah, in the moment there were a lot of things that were happening. Obviously, the king of spades. I could have shoved, of course, but there was this thing where in the game, I felt like people just assumed that, and I think that this is a common assumption people make, that is that like, oh, this guy is like going to try to bully me around because he's played a lot of really tough games. So I feel like those hands that can shove in theory oftentimes go really, really bad if people just think that you're going to be messing around a lot more than what you are. So I think shoving would have been an okay play, but there were a lot of things happening. I remember in the moment just being like, I think he's bluffing. I just think he's bluffing. I just think it's as simple as that. My cards are okay. They're not that good, but like, I think he's bluffing. So I'm going to call.
Yeah, no, you bring up an interesting point too with sort of your flop sizing, right? Because half pot, like that's a lot more ace heavy. And, there's certainly plenty of ace X combos that you're checking back turns. So maybe David's thinking like, I got to bluff that one. But like, you sort of mentioned your spidey senses. And I'm convinced that in theory, you broke the hand down and you're like, I beat 9-10. That ain't enough to make that call. Okay. And that's not enough to make the call. So I'm curious, like with all the study you do, and I know you're like deep in the solvers, you are the solver. How do you decide like when to just, throw that out the window and sort of go with live read, which I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt like that's where you leaned heavily on.
No, I actually find myself doing that ton. I mean, at the end of the day, I know that how hard I try to always be balanced, and I know how exploitable I am myself just by, reviewing my own play and the moods that I'm in, or if I'm fatigued or whatever it may be. I know that I give off tons of stuff and everybody else does too. I don't care who you are. Even if you're not attached to the outcome, sometimes you can just be a little sloppy with it, right? And I've played poker for a living for 20 years, and way before solvers, I was relying on my gut to make as many good reads as I possibly could. And I made a lot of bad calls and I made some good ones. And I developed an intuition by trusting myself to go out on a limb and make a bunch of mistakes. And yes, I'm really obsessive about studying poker theory, and I find it very interesting, but that is a secondary reference point to, I will always trust my intuition before I will just say, oh, I have the hand I have to call, I have to call. I don't do that. I rely on myself as a poker player to make the best decisions. And I say, hey, I've been doing this for the better part of 2 decades. And I think that when you've earned that many hands in the chair, if you're not listening to yourself, you're making a big mistake.
Yeah, it's interesting because we were just talking about this hand before in the show, and we felt like you might have been the only guy to be able to make this call. And part of what I was thinking in my response is the idea that like you're used to playing with a shot clock, and you're used to breaking down very like complex hands, and you go through the process where I don't think, say, for example, Rob in poker or somebody would be able to get to that conclusion as quickly as you did. So I'm curious about your process when you're faced with this river bet. Like, are you going through sort of like, what is the GTO optimal line here? What do I have to call with? What do I not? And then, deviating based on player. How do you, what's your process? Because you only get 30 seconds or a minute in these spots.
Yeah. So the one thing that I do is I start running every card through my head before the actual card rolls out. So just very generally, I try to, if I know that I'm going to be under, because I do play a ton of shot clock poker, and I actually play on trainers against, like, I'll set my own personal shot clocks and play and see how I can score against GTO. I really like doing that under pressure of shot clock as well, because it just translates well. It creates a more pleasant experience for players if you play fast, all of the normal things. So I like to be able to make decisions quickly. But one habit that I've formed is I will try to rank the best cards from the worst cards for me before they roll out. So I can kind of have a plan of like, okay, what will I do if they bet? What will I do if they check on 7 of spades, 8 of spades, 9 of spades, king of spades, whatever, So like that kind of gives me like a little bit of a buffer. And then, so yeah, I have that going for me. But then how it is when you face something, even if you're not looking at a person, if you're kind of in it, if you're in the moment and you feel the aura of everything around you and the person, the energy that they're emitting, and I mean this by like body language. I'm not saying like fucking hoo-hoo, like Mercury's retrograde kind of patchouli scent bullshit. I'm saying when you're looking at them, everybody has like an a way that they carry themselves and a way that they deliver themselves. And when cards change, it oftentimes will change something inside of them, right? So I just try to vaguely observe my opponent, and then like if something happens, whether it be like the speed at which they bet or like the delivery at which they release the bet or the tension in their body or whatever, I try to just feel it, because I just have this big database. And then from there, like I'll analyze the rank and how the card worked out for me and what my hand does to weight them towards value bets or bluffs or whatever.
Yeah.
Just
I think a really
quickly.
important lesson that you sort of share there with people that play poker is you don't have to just start thinking when it's on you. Like start the time in between, like often in a three-way pot, if someone's betting, the other person's thinking, that's your opportunity to go through, what do I do if and it allows you to sort of, use your time as efficiently as possible. And what that requires is like intense focus, which I know is something that, you've got that background. You've got what I call the championship mentality, whether it's physical fitness, athletic. And when you're in the zone, you give it your all. Do you feel like you were able to sort of in this environment, play like your A game? Did you feel good about it?
Yes, I 100% felt free. I felt like I was rested. I wasn't jet lagged. I was rested. I was enjoying myself, and I didn't feel attached to the outcome. So I gave myself the best opportunity to play well. And given the information that I had, I think I did as well as I could have done.
Cool. Well, now I just got just curious because you've obviously been watching the show and it seems like everybody in poker is talking about this show, right?
It's so much fun. Yeah, it's great.
I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on the production, how it's playing out? Are you excited to watch the rest, even though, we went home on a plane with our tail between our legs?
Yeah, I can't wait to watch the rest. And, going there just as a person who participated in the show, I think it's really important for the viewers to know that we knew very, very little. It was kind of a mysterious, fun experience. It wasn't something that's scripted. We had no idea what was going to happen. And
both were kind of I don't know if we want to fucking go. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I didn't know if they were going to make us eat slugs or, I just had no idea. And it was really, it had that fun kind of mysterious, almost semi-dangerous vibe to it. You were also in Korea. So it was it was a bit of a foreign place to me. And, it was just great. And I am very interested. And I know I have friends from back home who, they're not poker fans and they've just been obsessed with the show and they're really, really enjoying it. So when your friends enjoy it and your family enjoys it, it also makes you want to jump in there and sweat it with them and kind of tell them what's happening. So I will be watching every episode.
So on that note, one final question for you. If season 2 rolls around and there's an invite for Jason Koon, is Jason Koon getting back on a plane to Korea?
You better believe it, man. We got some redemption. All I hope is somehow you and I draw the same suit again so we can finish the business.
Yeah, we got it. We got to get it done. I wanted to just leave you with one thing because Terrence Chan, I told him I was going to interview and he wanted to give you a shout out. He said, you're the man. He loves watching you play. So shout out from the team. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the show. Maybe we'll break down some hands in the future.
Yep. Hit me up, boys.
All right. Thanks.
All right. So after Jason busts out, D-Dub goes on to win the last heat for Team Hearts, and we get the anticlimactic reveal of which team is going home. We all know that it's clubs at this point with sort of the poor results in each of the heats.
Was that as awkward as it looked, Daniel? Because everybody sort of, when everybody's when Platt's doing the in first place, everybody's sort of looking at each other going wait, I think it's us, right?
Yeah, who
it was won? So we're me and Kev Martin, because Kev Martin's a reality TV guy. We're maybe there's some sort of lifeline. Maybe there's another.
I thought there was going to be you guys were going to. I thought maybe you guys were going to compete against each other, and only 3 of you would go.
Maybe fourth paid 100 coins.
Yeah.
Who knows? The
Can you imagine?
Wins. Can you imagine any sort of hope to still be in the game? Although it was. That moment is supposed to be pretty, dramatic, right? Because it's usually you would have a third and fourth place team that's on the line, but this was so obvious. We're all oh, fuck, man, it's obviously us. And you see Josh, he's they knew it wasn't them. How do you can't win if in 4 heats you come fourth, third. There's no way to do worse than that.
Yeah,
it's impossible to do worse than that. You can't.
Danny, when you guys are talking, and I, again, don't know 100% on how much input you had on that format and the payout. Obviously, you're in it, so I'm sure you probably didn't know about it. But, it just, the payouts, the mystery payout ended up being somewhat similar. There were some thoughts, it'll be winner take all or whatever format that it might be. But the payouts were, I think they were top heavy-ish, but pretty kind of, similar to the first three heats. First off, get your thoughts on the mystery payouts. How about that?
No, again, we sort of touched on this earlier. I think the value of it is not giving people perfect information so they can use ICM and play them perfectly and create like this boring style where like, I know going in, I need just the third. We didn't want that. What they ended up choosing, they chose that for season 1. Who knows what they'll do in season 2 in terms of formats and things. You'll see a lot of like, different sort of surprises here and there. But yeah, they went with the standard one. But again, the fact that nobody knew, I think, that did the job it was supposed to.
So Ali Najad comes out, and by the way, it's hilarious to see Ali so serious throughout all the episodes so far. He's very like monotone, and we all know how much fun guy Ali is, and to see him kind of serious is jarring almost. But you guys say your goodbyes. You're flying home, the four of you. And then we get the great teaser. One of the great things about the first episodes is the teasers that we've seen for the upcoming shows. You guys have done a great job with it. We see Olga in tears. We see Kaina upset. She's feeling like slighted and amongst her teammates. Charlie getting heated of all people, and then Jungle and Yoviral get into it. Looking forward to seeing round 2, the format, and how it all plays out with the 3 remaining teams. So thanks to everybody out there for joining us. Thanks to you guys for getting together. Thanks to Jay Koon for stopping in and giving us his thoughts. And we will see you on Monday after episode 5.